I'm excited to work with you today, James, and learn from you about how we can help people just get more out of their life and specifically their relationships, because it's certainly hard to juggle all of it. So, looking forward to your insight. Welcome. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Jared. It's a pleasure to be on here with you. Excited to have this conversation with you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know people hopefully won't hold this against you, but I know you're a big Laker fan. So I think you're semi excited about the whole LeBron James thing. So give us a little bit about
Yeah.
who James Simpson is, and then we'll get into it.
But I grew up in Southern California. Grew up playing sports. Love playing sports. My background, kind of a little bit of a difficult situation. Grew up in a home. When my mom and dad got married, they separated after a year. Lived with my mom. She got married to my stepdad. Drugs and marriage don't go well together. So her and my stepdad got divorced probably after about five or 6 years of marriage. They had 3 kids together. So I had 3 younger siblings in that house. After their divorce, things got worse, obviously with addiction, and she isolated herself more and more in her room, closing everybody else off for that as a kid. And as a kid, seeing that and seeing like drug paraphernalia, needles, marijuana, those kind of things, it was very difficult. I struggled in school, homework, didn't understand what was going on. Physically, I wasn't, doing well. I remember I had a lot of cavities in my teeth. I just remember some of these things from my childhood, but kind of these difficulties. I remember the school coming by and dropping off clothes. So it's kind of a difficult situation. Then I moved to live with my dad when I was 10 years old. My dad was in the military. So he kind of straightened things out, for me and raised a bar of expectation for me in my life of what to strive for. So I went from failing in my school to, getting a 3.0 GPA average. And he supported me in my, playing sports and was always there for my games. He had married my stepmom at the time, and she was a fantastic influence. She did all she could to make a connection, no matter how hard I tried to hate her,
Yeah.
or just like her, because she took away my time with my dad, kind of deal. But she loved and earned my love, and started calling her. I called her mom. I told her I want to start calling her mom by the time I was about 14, after 4 years.
Wow.
So and there was difficulties there too as well with my
Sure.
mom and dad kind of situations and stuff. I mean, we grow up in families, and we all have families have hard times. Relationships have hard times.
No, I mean, certainly relationships are complex anyways. And I know you know a little bit of the premise of the show, but I think in my career, I've seen it too often where someone has put all their eggs in their career basket or in their business basket, and they haven't spent that time in their relationship. And sometimes it goes the other way too. Sometimes we see people putting all of their eggs in the relationship basket, and they don't do what they need to for their health or their career. And so I don't mean to only say, people are so focused on their business that they don't take care of their relationships, but the idea is that we can be balanced. So what is your background? What led you to, becoming a therapist and becoming a counselor, or was there something else driving you?
I think it's just something that's always drawn me towards wanting to work with people, helping them grow, helping them achieve, helping them enjoy life more. Having difficulties early on in your life, and then seeing what joy can be like in healthier relationships, with good direction. I have always felt drawn to people in their lives, and what would help them feel healthier, happier, and so I've just had a joy to bring that. And I didn't really know it wasn't an idea or a thought. I didn't know what to do. It was just like maybe become a teacher or coach because I like basketball. Didn't really have any understanding of it. It was actually when I was working at University of Phoenix, I came across a counseling program, and I thought, oh wow, I could actually work with people and help them improve. And I love this. I love the Anthony Robbins, the Jim Rohns, the self-improvement books and so forth. And so I saw that as an avenue to where I can learn and be credentialed, so to say, or certified by board or whoever in the state to work with individuals and help them in their lives. And so that's where I'm at. And now at this place where I'm at, I feel the most content and complete of what I do.
Yeah.
Like it's the right place for me. So.
And right now you're working with primarily couples, you're working with some teens, but primarily you work with, couples, right?
Yeah, I would say it's probably 50-50
Okay.
with couples and working with teens and parenting. I mean, when I'm working with teens, I'm working with parents on how they can help work with their teens and help their teens if they're struggling with any form of addiction, or if they're struggling with pornography or anxiety, depression issue, which we're seeing a lot of obviously in our society. I mean, we see the news and the suicide rates with teens going up, and the screen time and so all those things that are playing factors into our issues with our youth right now. But yeah, so I spend time with them, and then couples work. I do couples work as far as in their marriage or relationships. If they're not married yet, but dating and so forth. Do work with a lot of work too in betrayal trauma in relationships, where there's emotional affairs, infidelity, addictions that lead to dishonesty and hiding, and how do we mend those? And that's a very, it's not an easy thing to do. So yeah, those are some areas that I work in.
So let's kind of jump into it, because I know, I think it's a well thrown around statistic that 50% of marriages end in divorce. You alluded to the fact that, depression, anxiety, they're at all-time highs. It appears, suicide rates are going up. It clearly, from a mental health perspective, it appears, at least, things are getting worse. So tell us what kind of trends, or what are kind of the big three things that you're seeing that are maybe contributing to those types of trends?
Yeah. I think, generally overall, I think we're a society of consumption. Whether we're consuming food or sugar or screen time, social media, or sports and entertainment, we're very much a society of consumption is what I see. And I think one of the areas that we really need to get better at, or back to, or more engaged in, is being consumption of relationships, having more time, quality time with our loved ones, with our spouses, with our children, with our neighbors. Just getting to know our neighbors. I think there's such a huge disconnect, even within our own communities, of our own neighborhoods, that we don't really know the people around us. And there's an opportunity to really build a lot of strength in community, strength in relationships, improving self-esteem, improving resiliency through the relationships that we have, to know that our neighbors have our back, or we're taking care of each other just like we would within our own families and with our own children. And I think because there's such a consumption in all the areas of distraction, such as social media, screen time, entertainment, and there's not really much of a struggle that we kind of experience. Like if you need food, you can get it. If you need, clothes, it's easy to get. I mean, everything's easy access. There's not really much of a struggle. And when there's a struggle, though, who do we go to? We go to people. People are the greatest resource in the world that we can have. And so because there's not much of a struggle, I think that we often just turn towards that entertainment, the consumption of that. So I think really that if we work on the consumption of relationships, we'll find a healthier self-esteem. I think that's one of the biggest issues that we see in our society. There's a lot of low self-esteem, and that does stem from the consumption of things like social media and entertainment and so forth. Another part of consumption is with entertainment is like Netflix. We can sit down and binge watch shows after shows after show. I mean, they just put out so many shows, right? Yeah. Amazon and Netflix and all these other. When we were growing up, right, the show, our favorite show, would come on once a week, right? And then likely it would be a rerun, for like 2 weeks in a row. And so we were bored. We're like, let's go outside and play, or let's go do something. Let's call our friends. So
yep, I've already seen this one.
That kind of goes into it.
Yeah.
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 So,
so tell me how. I mean, I agree with you. Our society is a society of consumption. We're almost more takers than I think we are givers sometimes. But how does that
Yeah.
consumption play into my relationship? How does that give me low self-esteem? Like, shouldn't I be able to watch Netflix and do all the other stuff? I mean, why do I feel less about myself, or why is my relationship worse because I'm consuming?
Yeah. So we have to consider what we are consuming. And what we're consuming often is fantasy. We're consuming a fantasy world that's all like it's outside of us. Like when I was sitting down, and I'm guilty of this. I was watching a sci-fi Netflix series, and I was hooked on it, right? And there
Sharknado?
was so much. No, it was actually what was it called, Colony or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm like hooked on this sci-fi show, and becoming kind of consumed by it, and there's a struggle, and there's this like alternate reality, and I'm like identifying with these characters, and I'm like, what would I do in that situation? And then so we have so I'm in that, right? And then when it's over, it's done, and we get to those points where we're like, I just got to get to the end, so I don't watch this anymore, like, so I'm not distracted by it. And then when you get done, and then you come back to reality, and you're like, well, in fantasy world, it's like there's this really big struggle, and I'm fighting these aliens, and I'm saving other people, and these crazy things are happening. And I come back to the real world, and now I got to go pull weeds in my front yard, or get the oil change in my car, or go to work. And it's this, so it's just, it distracts us from, it creates a false sense of reality, and we can take that into our relationships. We can dramatize the novelty and how romantic this was, and how special, look at all the things he does or she does, and how he feels so significant, or she feels so loved, and we can portray that onto ourselves in our own lives and our own relationships. So I think that's where the fantasy world is what can help impact or hurt, not help, but hurt our relationships.
So I'm hearing two things, and I'm hearing one is it broadens the gap of where we are and maybe where we think we should be or could be, or all the images that we see, like, oh, I'm not there, I'm a failure because I don't have a nice car or a nice house, or all of this stuff, right? Is the one thing. So it creates that gap that, of course, then we feel worse about ourselves. The other thing is that it kind of can blend or blind our reality of what we should expect, or maybe even our behaviors. And as you talked, it reminded me of the story from my life, where when I first moved to Arizona, I was 21 years old, and I didn't have a job. I was living in an apartment with a bunch of buddies, and I literally sat inside and I played Grand Theft Auto for probably a week straight. No big deal. I'm a kid. I'm playing video games. I'm looking for a job occasionally here and there. It's college life. But I had this real kind of awakening as one day I decided to go grab some food, and I'm driving down the road, and I see this biker on the side of the road. And I'm not kidding you, James. I had this inclination just to go, bink, and knock them off. Because that's all I had done for the past week, is play Grand Theft Auto. And so I think to that point, like all this consumption that you're talking about, all of this focus on other people's lives and all of these things that people have, makes us change our behavior. And maybe we then, we spend more than we should, or, maybe we behave inappropriately with the opposite sex the way that we should, or, maybe we're kind of towing the line in some of the areas where, maybe previously we shouldn't have, or we wouldn't have.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very spot on, Jared. And when you ask about,
just for the record, I didn't hit the cyclist. I refrained.
You did, right? You did, right?
I recognized, I was like, maybe that's not a good thing, and then maybe I shouldn't play Grand Theft Auto so much for so much time.
Yeah. Yeah, I could relate to those similar experiences too as well.
So where are relationships? Let's actually go here. Let's say that, man, we're recognizing things are just off track. And my wife and I, we had an experience the beginning of last year where we recognized a pattern where, like clockwork, we'd put the kids down for bed, we'd lightly clean up the kitchen, we'd watch Netflix for way too long, usually eating ice cream, and then we would try to go to bed. And by the time we went to bed, it was way too late. And so sometimes we would then try to have like a conversation. But at that point, it was almost too fragmented because I was falling asleep or she was falling asleep, or we would stay awake too late, even later than, originally, because we were now trying to have that conversation. So let's say that we're just deep in this entrenched state where relationships kind of on the rocks, relationships are shaky, our habits aren't the best. What do couples do to start moving out of that?
Yeah, so I think the first priority is individual themselves, is that they have to get into their own personal self-care for themselves. Because if the individual is not healthy, or if both individuals aren't healthy or living healthy lifestyles, healthy patterns, healthy rituals, then you're just putting two unhealthy people in a relationship together that creates even more conflict. We already live in a world of conflict. Relationship is conflict, and so it just makes it more difficult. So my recommendation, the first priority is, what's your own personal self-care? And this isn't about being selfish. Sometimes people don't, oh, that's just selfish for me just to think of doing those things for myself. And it's not, I'm not saying you do that the whole entire day for yourself, but there needs to be some time for yourself. I kind of stole this slogan from I can't remember who it was, but it was win the morning, win the day. And so there's 4 or 5 things I do every morning for myself that are just healthy patterns. And I tell myself, hey, as long as I get these things done, I've already won the day. And whatever happens externally outside of me, I can still take notice that at the end of the day, I like to look back and say, I did things that were healthy behaviors for myself and in my relationships with others. And so the first thing is, what is my self-care with exercise, with mental health, with my relationships, with my, with people, but also my spiritual relationship, whatever that may be. What am I doing and taking time for myself to think and to feel and to slow down so I can experience and appreciate the life and the world around me. And when I'm in that place, then I can enter into a relationship in a much better place or situation for my partner. I see this a lot in when I've worked with those that struggle with pornography and addictions and they get into hiding in line. The very first thing that we're working with them on individually is their daily. We call them dailies. What are your daily habits? What are your daily things you're going to do that are positive, empowering for you? That will, because those are the things that healthy people do. It's not like you just got out of doing them. And when healthy people are living, that's what they normally do, those types of things that which lead to the healthy relationships. So
Do you give specifics of what those self-care things should be, or do people just need to really find out what that would be for themselves? Or I imagine exercise is probably up there near the top of the list, like, right? Do something for your health. But what else? What are some other kind of go-to dailies that you give your clients?
Yeah. So typically, exercise always is a fantastic one. Obviously, the research shows that helps relieve, eliminate stress or reduce stress, not eliminate, but helps reduce stress, helps improve self-esteem and confidence and so forth. But yeah, there's a lot of great tools that can be used. I love meditation. I think meditation is a great tool to use to help reduce anxiety or fear, our fear-based emotions that we often have that cause us to unhealthy behaviors. But taking some time in meditation, I use an app called Headspace. It has 10 free sessions, and I just keep repeating them. 10 minutes long. I don't use it every day, but on the days where I feel like I need it, it helps me kind of calm myself. Positive affirmation, reading good content, reading good material, things that help us learn and grow. Right. There's and Jared, you might know this a little bit better, but CEOs, I think the average CEO reads 4 books a month or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. A lot.
And so, when they're getting to they're obviously performing at a high level, and they're the ones that are reading, like they're the ones that are going and saying, I need help. I've working in organizations and corporations, like CEOs, they go and they get personal development, they get coaching, and they spend thousands of dollars, and guess what? They get better. And what they really do is they get richer, right? And I'm not talking about just money. I'm talking about richer in their relationships, richer in their ability to give back and contribute to others. And the poor, they keep going towards entertainment, the things that don't really help them grow. So anyway, so reading good books, exercising, meditation, relationship building activities, whether it's spending time with your kids, or with your spouse or loved one. Those are some great things to do. Be part of a group, go join a group, that you can be face to face with, whether it's a sports league or it's a book club or something. Go do something that also engages with peers. Stay connected with humanity. That's one of the challenges, is when we stop doing that and we start isolating and we start being by ourselves, that those are very unhealthy behaviors. So those are all, good. Be part of a cause.
Love that.
Go join a service group. Those are all just great things to do.
And I mean, we're still talking about consumption, right? But now the consumption is something that's going to help us, build us up, make us strong. It's the age old, it's 80% diet, 20% exercise, right? That's the name of the game. And it's kind of the same with life in general. 80% diet, 20% really the activities and the exercise. But what are you filling yourself with? What are you spending your time doing? What is your 80%? Is 80% of what you do, is it good? Is it wholesome? Is it helping you be better in some way? Is it strengthening your relationship? And then, there's always going to be that 20%, that can be other things. And it doesn't mean you can't ever have ice cream or whatever it is. But ultimately, are we doing the things more often that are going to build us up, strengthen us, versus those things that really have very little value, like, Netflix or, just playing video games or whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
so awesome.
Yeah.
So first step is kind of create your own set of dailies for yourself, focusing on yourself. What's the next thing? Now, we're doing that. We're kind of in a better place. Habits are a little bit better, maybe not super solidified, but what's the next thing that we do to help improve our relationship?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest skills we can develop is empathy in our relationships, and learning to. I think it's definitely a loss. I have most couples that are in here, and they're like, I don't have any of them that say, "Oh, we're really good at that. Like, we practice that a lot," and even for myself, I didn't really understand how empathy works and how to actually do that. And I think it's something that we yearn from other people, because empathy is a bridge for human connection. Okay. If I'm being empathetic, it means I'm taking your perspective. I'm putting myself in your shoes, understanding where you're coming from. I'm not in my own self. I'm not internalizing it. And this is where a lot of the issues in fights or arguments come up from in couples, is that we really can't see our partner. We can't really understand what they're going through. When they get upset, we internalize their anger and their frustration, and then we internalize it and say, "Oh, this is my fault. I'm so bad," and I'm literally turning away from my partner, my spouse. That when they're saying in their anger and frustration, they're saying, "No, I don't want you to turn away. I want you to be present with me. I want you to understand what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling, and validate some of my emotions and some of my feelings." And so but when we internalize it and we take it in, it also lends to more defensiveness. Like, now this is your fault. Like, well, you should have thought about that first of all. This isn't my fault. Why are you getting upset with me?
Yeah.
And now I'm pushing back. As I'm pushing, guess what the other partner's doing?
Starts pushing
back. So now we're pushing against each other. Now we're not a partnership, now we're fighting. Now we're like almost like competitors in who's right and who's wrong. And we have to recognize that every individual in this world is different. No one person's born with the same DNA. It's a lot of it's very similar, but we all have a little uniqueness to us. So we're not what you say, apples or oranges. We're not all the same. We're of a different cut. And so we have to honor and respect and appreciate when my spouse says she's sad. I don't say, "Hey, well, just choose to be happy." You know what?
Doesn't work.
Just stop being sad. Just choose to be happy, right? But those are the messages, right?
Yeah.
And when we talk about anger, it's like, don't be angry, because anger is of the devil, right? I mean, those are the messages that we often hear, right? So we say, "Oh, push down your emotions. I don't want to deal with that." Empathy is the opposite. Empathy is about, wow, this must be really difficult for you. I don't, and another part of empathy is we have to get out of trying to solve everybody else's problems,
Yeah.
especially in our relationship. A lot of times they just want to give it a voice. They just want to know that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel sad. And it's okay to be afraid at times.
Yeah. I love that we're talking about this because there's a couple things. One of my favorite books of all time is Leadership and Self-Deception, which it makes
Mm,
the primary point that you have to look at other people and recognize that their objectives, their challenges, their problems are equal in importance to your own. And when we don't think that way, we start to say, well, their problem is less important than my problems, or their objectives are better than my objectives, or worse than my objectives. That's when we start to see that variance. And that's where I think a lack of empathy comes in, where we just don't, we think that they should just cowboy up or toughen up or push through it or whatever it is. And that's hard to do. And then the other side is trying to get away from that like fix it mentality or the expert mentality of like, oh, let me solve your problem. And this morning I came in from
mm-hmm.
my workout this morning. We're taking our kids to the My Little Pony movie. They were showing it in theaters, and so I walk in. I think my wife's okay with me sharing this. I'll find out later. And I walk in the door, and we're supposed to leave in about 45 minutes or so, and I can see visually that she's stressed, and she says, I need to figure out if I'm being, my expectations are too high, or if like our kids are out of control, kind of a thing. And it's probably a little bit of both. Our kids are a little out of control. But I so badly wanted to like throw in that moment, like, well, what have they done all day, or ask questions that would needle at a solution. And instead I just stopped and I said, what can I do to help? What can I do to help us?
Yeah.
And honestly, her answer was take the dog out, which is not a solution that I would have picked to help or support. But for her in that moment, that's what she needed. And so we were all able to relax. I took the dog out. We got to the movie just fine. We all had a great time. And so I recognize how, if we're one, not empathetic with people, and number two, we're too quick to insert ourselves into the solution instead of just taking a step back and saying, hey, this looks like it's frustrating for you, challenging for you. How can I help? And getting kind of on that same level playing field.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Like when we go into problem solving, we're almost, what we're implying to them is that they're doing it wrong and that they're not good enough. And you probably can't do this yourself kind of messaging. And in problem solving too, we have this illusion that we know what's best for them. Like you said, like she asked me to take off the dog, and I never would have thought of that. There's so many times when I have couples coming in here where the husband's like trying to problem solve, and he's like, I got rid of my shirt, or I stopped listening to this music, or whatever. They're trying to do all these things, and I said, hey, did you ever stop to ask her what she needs right now?
Oof.
No. Right.
Yeah.
And so and part of that too, what we have to understand, there's a lot of implied messaging. We have a lot of messaging that occurs constantly in our relationships. Remember, we're always in a lot of times it's in conflict. Okay, so we have personal messaging, self-messaging, we have family messaging, and we have social messaging or societal messaging, right? And so we have a lot of implied messages that are occurring. When I'm trying to fix you or fix that problem, one, I could be saying, hey, you really can't do this on your own. Or B, I could be saying, I don't really want to deal with your problems. So let's just get this fixed so we can move forward and I can go do what I want to do right now. Right.
Yeah.
And that's part of I think we talked about the leadership and self-deception piece is let's just move forward. So many times couples, especially betrayal trauma, when for example, I mean, it can happen with both parties. Let's say the husband has an addiction or commits an affair, and it's been some time. It's been a year. I haven't done anything, or it's been 6 months. Like, let's move forward. And she's still, and the other spouse is still in pain. They're still suffering, right? And they're not ready to move forward because usually the other spouse hasn't been empathetic enough and accountable enough to their actions to acknowledge it. So the other party stays in a place of fear and concern. Like, what if they do this again? I don't think they understand
Yeah.
yet. And the other spouse is like, this is too painful for me. I feel like I'm always wrong and I'm bad. So just get over it. I mean, I haven't done anything. And they start feeling resentment towards their spouse for still feeling hurt. And they have to learn to always stay in a place of empathy and accountability and not internalize it. It's really about their spouse is hurt and in pain. It's not like that you're a horrible person right now. Of course not. You've made changes and that's good for you. But your spouse still has pain. And let's just be present for that and acknowledge that. And that's okay. It's okay that, of course, you would feel scared. Of course, you would be in pain right now, and this would come up for you. And it's because of these things I've done in the past. So being empathetic and understanding, it can happen in the littlest forms. Sometimes it doesn't, it's nothing that we did. It's just an experience they had with a friend or coworker, or with the kids. And so if we can be emotionally present for them. And so here's the other part. We talk about time is love, and it truly is. When we give time to our relationship, it shows it's an act of love. Absolutely. But we can be with our spouse and not be with them. We can be in the same room.
Let's define that for this group, because
yeah.
What is that time? Yeah. Talk to us about what that should look like if it's going to count as time.
Yeah. So let me give it a new word. Time is love. I say presence is love. Okay. When I'm giving my presence to my spouse, and again, Dr. Gottman he talks about, relationships when they start turning away when they're healthy, they learn to turn towards each other as opposed to turning away and getting angry and avoiding. They learn to turn towards each other. So, instead of me turning away from them, I'm trying to turn towards my spouse and be present. So I'm making eye contact. These are implied messages. I'm making eye contact. I'm smiling with them. I'm giving them physical touch and I'm holding them, right? Physical touch is so essential. Sometimes we get like, I don't want to touch, right? But physical touch is so healthy for us. We do movement with them, whether we go out and exercise with them or we go play a game or we eat together. We have presence, and presence is, again, just because we're in the same environment doesn't mean we're really present for them, but being eye to eye and knee to knee, so to say, with them. And we're putting down our phone, right? Simon Sinek did a good video. Did you see that about his whole, like, if I have a phone in my hand and I'm talking, what am I saying is most important? I'm really saying it's my phone, it's not you. So presence, putting away the electronics. So when I watched that video, I was like, when I was planning on going to dinner with my wife, my wife and I, we schedule one night a week that we go to dinner, or we go do something together for our time. And so now here I'm trying to work on my presence. And so I'm like, I'm going to leave my phone. I'm not going to tell her this. I'm just going to leave my phone in my car, and I'm not going to bring it in to the restaurant with us. And we get into the restaurant, we sit down, we're waiting for my food. I stick my hand in my pocket. I'm like, there's my phone, and just, I couldn't, my whole ritual, my mind is like, I'm taking my phone with me. And I'm like, and I tell my wife, almost like an addict, I'm like, hey, sweetie, I had a goal not to bring my phone in the restaurant. I did. It's in my pocket right now, but I'm not going to pull it out or do anything with it. I'm like confessing to her, even though she had no idea that was my goal. I'm like letting her know, hey, I'm not going to do that because I want to be present for you in our dinner. But I still felt it there, and it is somewhat of a distraction, whether it buzzes, something goes off. So I think if the audience is listening or anyone out there, go ahead. The challenge is, how can I be more present for my spouse, and what are the little things I can do that can show that presence?
There's so many things there. I mean, early on in our marriage, we recognized that when we would have a disagreement, then we would do the cold shoulder thing, and we would eat up, sometimes a couple of days where we were just, you would coexist, but you wouldn't actually interact. And I don't know why we figured that out like pretty early on, but we recognized that, man, we're just wasting a ton of time. And so we actually instituted a hug rule where basically, like, when we were in that cold shoulder time, one of us had to go to the other and give them a hug. Because you're exactly right. When you have that physical touch, it's hard to still be mad. It's hard to be thinking angrily about him. You have no choice but to just be like, man, you know what? Like, I love you. I love you. It's been, I married you, and it's just us. And then you can work through it in a more human way, I think. So I love that. And even just the amount of things that fragment our attention from our relationships, whether it be our kids, whether it be our spouse, man, just putting the phones away, just looking at them and asking questions and being curious and interested goes such a long way. And we are, we do a pretty good job of only one of us taking our phone in when we go out on a date. We have a rule with our family where our kids, they're allowed to say jinx if both of us are on the phone at the same time, and then we have to put it down for 30 minutes so that we're not on our phones. And here's the sad thing. With as much attention as we put on keeping our phones and our devices away and letting it not be the center of attention, when I ask my 6-year-old, hey, what's the hardest thing about being a kid? They say, seeing you guys on your phones all the time. And yes. I'm like, we're not even on our phones that much. Comparatively, right? If we're playing the comparison game, we're not even on them as much as we know other parents are and we know other people are that go out. And yet that's what our kids still see and still struggle with. And our 2-year-old, still, if our phone is on the other side of the room because we left it there on purpose, he'll find it and bring it over to us. And so just as good as we think we are, we still got a ton of work to do. We still got to do even better and distance ourselves from it even more, because we don't want our kids being like, man, I just can't wait until I get a phone. And then who knows how they build a relationship around, that type of a device.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot too. My kids have constantly made comments, and this is why I'm trying to make more of an effort with my being off of my phone and being more engaged. The comments about, you're always on your phone. Like, why are you always on your phone? Dad's always, and then they start communicating that outwardly. And I'm like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm a bad parent, right? Internally, right? That's what comes up first. But really, I do owe it to my kids to have a great relationship, because when I'm away from them, I miss them like heck. And I want to spend time with them. And so my 2-year-old, I remember she does the same thing. She brings me, when she finds our phone, she brings it to me. And I'm like, this must be sending the message to her that I have to live with this, or I can't live without this. Yeah. This tool in my life. Like, it's here, Dad, you want some water? Do you want to survive? Here's your water, Dad. You need it. Like, kind of deal. Even for myself, I put an app on my phone. It's called Moments, and it actually tracks how long on the phone I am on a day and how many times I pick it up. And it can tell me all the other, like, which sources I go to or when I'm on my phone. But yeah, it was 3 to 4 hours a day, picking it up 75 to 85 times a day.
Yeah.
And I didn't think, I'm like, I don't think I'm on it as much as some, but so I have to be mindful of that and put new rituals in my life to make sure I'm more present for my wife and for my children, not so much to the technology of the phone.
So, well, I mean, I think, when we think about the relationships that we have in our lives that we would say are most important, and then we use an app or something like that where we say, wow, I spent 4 hours on my phone or 5 hours on my phone. And I think the average is 4 hours on devices and 3 hours on screens. So television, Netflix, whatever it might be. So you figure 7 hours a day, like how much time are we spending in comparison with those that we love? Really sitting down. Like, I know sometimes it's hard to read a story to my kids at night. And in my mind, I'm like, that's going to take at least another 8 minutes. Like, I'm trying to get you to bed as quick as I can. I don't have 8 more minutes to spend reading you a story. But we try to remind ourselves that we're going to then go downstairs and we're probably going to watch TV, or we're probably going to watch a show, and recognizing that, wow, we've got to make sure and really spend that time with the kids in a way that helps them know that they're most important. And same thing with my wife, got to spend enough time that she knows she's most important. So I know we only have a few more minutes left for today, and we haven't even got into man, how do people do all of that and juggle a career and business, etc.? So I'm defining this right now as part one. We'll have you back on again and definitely do part two. But any other just
Sure.
last tips kind of in that are in line with what we've already talked about?
Yeah, going back to the empathy part, there are a couple things I just want to add to that. Is one is it's so important when we're in a place of empathy to remember back when we made mistakes that were similar to what maybe our spouse has done, and how we felt when we made a mistake. Or even for parents to kids, do you remember what it was like when you were 16 and you caused havoc or did some dumb stuff, and remember what that felt like, and I'll tell you what, man, especially with kids, teens love to hear their parents' stories. We fail as parents about telling our kids stories about our lives. When I hear stories about my dad or my parents, I'm like, I still remember them. I love them. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, that was cool. And I tell other people, storytelling and understanding our, and this is kind of side tangent, storytelling and knowing our parents, our grandparents, and so forth. Research shows it builds resiliency uh, to when we have challenges and so forth. But we love to hear the stories of our parents. But if we can relate and be more relatable to our spouses and share our story or our experiences too, what that's like, and I can see why, and go to that place with them. We find that we have a lot more in common with each other than we realize when in our own mistakes. And their mistakes are similar to our mistakes, and then when we go to that place, we can have more compassion. And so that's a healthy tool to go to in empathy when your spouse made a mistake or your kids make a mistake. Just remember that you do too, and the examples of what you've lived in your own life. And the last thing is give yourself and those around you some grace. Be kind, be understanding. We make mistakes. It's okay. It happens. And yes, it hurts and it might suck, but give each other some grace. Give yourself some self-compassion when you do make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up too much. Just now we take it from a learning phase. What would I do if I were to replay this? What would I do differently? And that's what I'll do next time. But sometimes we just beat ourselves up so badly that we can't see what change might look like, or we can't see or feel like we might even are capable of being loved by somebody else because of the mistake we made. But give yourself some grace, give grace to the other person across from you, and that will help lend to more of empathetic responses and connection, emotional relational connection
Yeah.
between you and others.
The other side of, putting yourself above other people is putting yourself below others, right? And so don't want
Mm-hmm.
to do that. We want to make sure that we're all in the same race. We're all in the same journey. We're all trying to figure it out, do our very best. We've all got weaknesses. We've all got strengths. And so, man, I've come across, and I know you have, people that just are beating themselves up, who quite honestly aren't trying to do things because they don't believe that they can. But when they actually go out and try, they're surprised that, wow, they not only do it, but they do it well. So it really is
Mm-hmm.
just a matter of trying to recognize we're all in the same journey. We're all in the same path. We're all capable of so much more than what we are currently doing. And so recognizing that and following those steps, trying to get to that next level. Awesome stuff today, James. I know you've got a client coming up, so we're going to let you run. But thank you so much for your time today. Like I said, this is part one. So we'll definitely have you on maybe again in the next couple of weeks, and we'll finish this conversation and talk about how it relates to people in their careers. How do they juggle it all successfully?
Perfect.
So, love it, James. Thanks so much.
Sounds
Appreciate
great.
it. We'll
Thanks,
talk with
Jared.
you next time.
Okay. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
James. See ya.
All right. Bye.
Man, so many good things there. I love the last part that he shared about really being vulnerable with our kids and our spouses. And I just actually got back from working with a client in Minnesota where we talked about psychological safety, which psychological safety in the work environment essentially is that you feel confident enough that you're able to share your honest opinion, whether it be, a new idea or a problem that you're having with something, or maybe a mistake that you made, but having that environment where you feel confident enough to share those things and confident that there won't be a negative repercussion. whether, from the business standpoint, but also from a social standpoint. And we talked about how one of the primary ways that leaders create psychological safety in the workplace is through their own vulnerability. First, we recognize that we've made mistakes. No matter who you are, where you're at, you didn't get there mistake free, right? We got there learning along the way, making mistakes, fumbling through things. And most likely we had at least one person, if not multiple people, that gave us second chances, who gave us another try, who helped us get to that next level, whatever it might be, so that we could learn and develop and grow. And so as a leader, as a parent, creating that psychological safety for those around you really requires you to be open about your own mistakes. We do this with our kids, and we've shared our own mistakes. And there's a story that I had where I was working with a client, and I had them on the phone, and I had knocked over my drink, and the drink went everywhere on my desk. And I didn't mute my phone before I said, "Oh, I can't believe I just dropped my drink." And my client was like, "Wait, what just happened?" And I explained it. Not a huge thing. Client was totally fine. But my daughter brings that story up all the time. We'll just be sitting there on, a random night, and she'll be like, "Dad, remember when you were on the phone with a client and you knocked your drink over?" And you were like, "Oh my goodness, I knocked my drink over." And she loves that story. And she remembers it because I shared it with her at a time when she spilled. And now, whenever our other kids spill, my daughter, McKay, will share her story of spilling stuff as well as my story of spilling stuff. So, which kind of hurts a little bit sometimes to relive that over and over and over. But I think that's the reality of what vulnerability does, is it opens people up to feel comfortable enough to share and to be open. So we want to create psychological safety, especially in our workplace, especially in our homes, where people feel like they can just come to us and say, "Hey, this is what I'm struggling with." And so again, vulnerability is a big part of that. Another way that leaders do that is that they frame things as learning experiences. They frame things as opportunities to learn versus, did you execute? Did you do it perfectly? Or did you do it wrong? What did you learn? What did you try? If you had the chance to do it again, what would you do differently? So framing the work, whatever it is, as a learning opportunity. And then another way, one of the last ways that I'll share today is that we just, as leaders, have to be curious. So as parents, we've got to be curious. We have to ask questions about what's going on in the lives of people, and ask specific questions. Things like, "Hey, what are you struggling with right now?" Or, "Hey, what are you most excited about?" Or, "If there's one thing that you could do, what would it be?" And really drawing out some of the difficulties or some of the feelings and emotions that people have. And that gives us, as James kind of pointed out, it gives us an opportunity to position ourselves and to give empathy to other people. We also see more from their perspective. So when we then go to the drawing board and say, "Hey, we want to find a solution," we now have input that matters. And that input then can lead to a solution that comes with buy-in. Like my wife asked me this morning to take the dog out. I would have never said, "I'm going to take the dog out, and that will help this entire situation of getting our family out the door on time." So an amazing interview with James. We'll definitely have him on again in the next couple of weeks. We'll wrap this up and do part 2 with James Simpson, marriage and family therapist. But if you have not joined our group on Facebook yet, it's called Own Your Business. It's for executives, business owners, entrepreneurs who are looking to connect with others and really excel in all areas of life. So don't wait. Think about the relationships in your life, and think of what really truly is more important than those. And my guess is that there's probably not much. And so let's all together collectively identify, where can we spend more time, more quality time, as James shared, with those that we love, those that we care about most, and how can we take our relationships to new heights. So thanks for watching today. Thanks for sharing. If you love this video, please share it with those that you care about and appreciate. Like it, send a comment. If there's anything I can do to help you or James can help you. We didn't really ask him how to connect with him, but join us in our group. He's a member there as well, and we'll tag him and link some stuff up as well. So until next time, everyone, get out there, own your business, and we'll see you next time.